Hi there, I'm Scott from ByTheBrush Miniatures, and today I'm going to talk to you about weathering your models. So the first thing we're going to look at doing is creating some dirt, and the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the greaves to make it look like it's a bit muddy down there, and maybe also the loincloth as well. And we're going to start off with Dryad Bark to do that, and I'm going to be using a large dry brush from the army painter. So you're just going to load it up and just sort of treat it as if you're doing a dry brush, but don't get rid of all the paint, just have quite a little bit more than what you would normally have. Then what you're going to do, just apply it like that, especially towards the bottom. Don't try and avoid the recesses like you would on a traditional dry brush, because that's not what we're trying to do here. Just go to about up to the shin, where you're going to sort of change into more of a stippling motion rather than the dry brush. Now for the next step, we're going to be using Fung Brown, and to apply this we're going to be using a tiny little bit of sponge. This is just a ripped piece of kitchen sponge. You can use a pair of pliers or anything like that. I'm just going to be using these clippers from the army painter because they've got a nice sort of not so sharp area on them. That's going to be perfect for this. And what you're going to do is you're going to get your sponge, just fold it up, sort of scrunch it into like a little sort of ball, like nice and tightly packed, and just stick it right between whatever you're using. Then that's going to be what we're going to be using to apply this step. So just like with a dry brush, you're going to be trying to get as much of the pigment off this as possible before you begin to use it. Just into a tissue, and then just grab the model, just dab it on just like that, just over where you've already done the last step. This is just going to add a little bit of depth to the weathering we've already done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on all of the armour plating of the model, and for this I'm going to be using Iron Hand Steel, and the reason for that is because it's a little bit darker than Lead Belcher or Balkan metal looking paint. So it's just going to give a bit more depth to the chips and scratches we're going to be creating on the armour. So it's a similar technique to what we've just done, that sort of dry brushing type technique, where we get as much of the pigment off as possible and then just apply it in a dabbing motion. Now once most of the pigment's out, just on the metallic bits, just very lightly, start dabbing like this. You'll start to see some natural looking scratches forming. Now for the next step, you're going to get a fine detail brush and a highlight colour to match the armour that you've just chipped, and in this case it's going to be Calgar Blue for me. So what you're going to do is you're going to find all of the sort of really big scratches like this one that we have. So just here where you can see we've got a pretty big scratch there, just highlight the parts that are sort of closest towards the model's feet with the highlight colour, just to give it a bit of depth. Now for the next step, very similar, you're going to get Abaddon Black, and this time we're just going to look for some really big ones like this one we've got just here on the shoulder, like really massive sort of blotchy one, and then you're going to fill it in as if it looks like a hole, so it's going to look very sort of destroyed and broken, so you're just giving it a bit more depth. So you can see, just like I'm doing here, I've got the scratch there, I'm just filling it in just in the middle, just so it looks like a hole caused by a projectile of some kind. Once that step is complete, there's just a bit more sponging to do. So you're going to be sponging Dryad Bark just lightly all over the model, and then Fung Brown, sponge that on the leather part and then smudge it with your finger while it's still wet. You can see now we've done that, and we've also gone ahead and based it. You can see in the leather here where it's been stippled on with the sponge, and then I've gone ahead and smudged it. You can sort of see that effect just there where it's smudged across the leather. It's the same on here, it just gives a bit of a varied tone to the leather. And then you can obviously see all over the model where there's been that Dryad Bark, it just gives this nice muddy effect there. Now I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon if you fancy doing that. You can follow our Instagram to take a look at some of the things we're working on, and you can also join our open Discord if you want to become a member of our community, which is steadily growing, and it would be really nice to see you there. And with that said, I'll see you later.